Now that we've learned all about mental ray materials, we can start looking at photometric lighting. Here's a scene of an interior that uses photometric lighting. And I've got a rendered image here. Let me pull that up on the screen here for you. These images do take a while to render. This one took about 3 minutes to render on a fairly fast machine. You'll see it's pretty small image size and it took quite a while, so be prepared for that. In these exercises, at this stage, I don't want to use the version here that has all the materials because that's going to take a lot longer to render. So as you'll see, I'm going to open up another version of this scene that just has a blank white material, and we'll start from there. But I just wanted to show this to you to give you a little bit of a taste of the power of photometrics. So what are photometrics? Well, as the name implies, it's photo meaning light and metrics meaning measurement. So photometrics are a way of measuring light sources in the real world. Generally speaking, when working with interior lighting, we'll work with a unit of measure called lumens because that's what light bulbs and fixtures are rated at, are lumens. Once you have the photometric information, whether it's coming from artificial lighting source or from daylight, that information can then be used to calculate advanced lighting techniques and global illumination like ray tracing and final gather. This is an actually physically accurate simulation. And because of that, we can precisely represent what a particular scene would look like given a certain lighting scheme. So this is very valuable to architects and interior designers so they can visualize exactly what it's going to look like, on a certain day, at a certain latitude, at a certain time. Pretty incredible stuff. In order to do this properly, though, we have to follow some rules. First of all, we need to have a camera that's calibrated in some way. Just like when you take a photograph in the real world, you have to set the exposure. So I'm going to hit Alt-W and go out to show you that I've got some cameras in this scene. I'm going to open up my layer manager and make the cameras visible. So you can see I've got several cameras viewing the scene from different angles. So that's sort of a prerequisite here. We got to have a camera and we have to apply some kind of exposure control to the camera or to the scene. So that way we'll bring this very large range of possible brightnesses that we find in the real world down to a narrower range that we can represent on a screen like a TV or a computer monitor. So that's called exposure control. Another thing that we have to do is make sure that everything in the scene is modeled to accurate real-world scale, because photometrics assume and depend upon the fact that everything in our scene is modeled to real-world scale. And so I've set my scene up to feet and inches, and I've modeled all these objects to the size that they would really be in the real world. So that's critical and it's not optional. So I can't stress that enough of how important it is. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. One last thing to mention about photometrics is that it's a starting point. Once again, we can cheat. We can push our rendering towards different contrasts, or we can cheat the color in ways that we could not really do very well in the real world. It's kind of akin to, if you took a photograph of a real scene, you might bring it into Photoshop and adjust it so that it would print out well or display well on a TV screen or what have you. So the same sort of principles apply here in 3D. We can adjust our rendering to get quote-unquote physically accurate results, or we can adjust it to get more impressionistic results that satisfy some sort of artistic criteria. So that's a little bit of an introduction to the concepts behind photometrics. Let's dig in and we're going to take a look at modeling to scale.